Now we've got the duck moving across the screen and we can shoot it. It's time to start spawning them. So what we need to do is to create a new folder here in the assets. So if I just create new, add a folder, and we'll call this prefabs. It's a standard word for any reusable component that we want to create. It doesn't have to be called prefabs. You can call the folder anything you like. It's just convention. And then we'll move the duck into the prefabs folder, which immediately turns it into a prefab. Notice that we've got it tagged as duck. That's going to be important later on. Right, now before we get rid of this duck, which is a static object, we'll just to work out some positions for our spawning. To do that, I'm just going to turn off the sky. So to do that, just select the object, and then you've got this tick here next to the name. If we just untag that, we can see the screen edges. Right, so I'm just going to move this duck off the screen because we want them to start off the screen, and we'll have a look at its transform. So its X position there is say 9.18, says that. So perhaps we'll round that up to 10. Okay, so we want them all to start with an X position of 10. Now these ducks can go up or down, so we don't want them to spawn at the top of the screen or at the bottom, because if they go down from the bottom, we'll lose them. If they go up from the top, we'll lose them again. So I'm going to suggest we do, say, halfway-ish. So that looks like 2.5, I think. And of course, this is the 0 line, so minus 2.5. So we can spawn them from any random number between minus 2.5 and 2.5. Okay, so that's going to be our starting parameter. So what we need now is a new game object to control the game. And create it empty. I'm going to call this game controller. Right, just for neatness sake, we'll just reset it to be the center of the screen. No real purpose for that, but however, there we go. And this is just going to contain a script, which is going to be the game control script. So here in the scripts folder, I'll add a new C# script, and I'll call that game control. Right, let's get that moving. Right, so here we are in the game control. So what we're going to do is to spawn the ducks first of all. So a bit like the game we did before, the apple catcher, we need a public game object, and we'll call that spawn duck. Okay, and we'll need to have another variable for the spawn time. So this is going to be a float. I'm going to call this spawn time. Okay, so before I go into the start and update, I'm going to create a new coroutine which returns the I enumerator, and I'm going to call this spawn ducks. Okay. we need a private variable up here. And this is going to be a Boolean type. And it's going to be game over. And in start, we say, well, game over is false. Right. And we need that in here because we're going to create a loop as we did before. And this loop is only going to carry on as long as it's not game over. So we'll put in while not game over. Remember, the exclamation mark is not. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to wait. So we'll do this is yield return new. Wait for seconds. There it is. And we're going to put in spawn time. Okay, so that just releases control back to the main program loop for 1 second, or for whatever our spawn time is, and then returns back to this coroutine to do the next thing. So I'm going to create a game object. And I'm going to call this new duck. And I'm going to create a new object, and it's going to be of the spawned duck type. Right. So that creates a new instance of this, whatever the spawned duck is going to be, and create a new object based on that called new duck. So now I'm going to position this new duck. So new duck dot transform dot position equals new vector 3. Right, so we decided we're going to put the x value as 10 off the screen. We're going to put a random value here, so we're going to put random range, and it's going to be between minus 2.5 floating point and 2.5 floating point. Right, and there is another value to put in, which is the Z value in and out of the screen. Of course, we don't want it to move in and out of the screen, so we'll just put it in as 0. Okay, so that should create a new duck for us. I'm just going to put default time in here. So let's say 1 second. Okay, right. What we need to do now is to start the coroutine from the start menu, start function. So I'm going to put in here. There'll be other things I'm going to put in there, so I'll put this in. Oops, spelling. Okay, and then in double quotes, spawn ducks. Okay, let's just check that by attaching to Unity. No errors, no warnings, no issues found. Good. Let's stop debugging, and that should attach it to our game. So the scripts, so we have the game control, and everything seems to be fine there. So I need to attach this game control script to the game controller. I can do it like this, just drag it up from there onto the game controller, and you should see it's added it on as a component of the game controller. We need to identify what it is we're going to spawn. That's in the prefabs folder. So we'll put the duck object here. Right. Let's turn the sky back on and we'll test it. We don't actually need this duck anymore, so I'll just delete it from there and we'll try. There they go. Lovely. What we want to do next is to change this default cursor into the reticule. That's the next job. We're going to change the cursor from this default arrow cursor into the reticule image that we've got here. So if we just have a look in the images folder, we've got the reticule here, which has been imported as a sprite, 2D and UI. But I want to turn this into a cursor. So if we just look at the drop down here, we've got the option to change it into a cursor. Okay. Now, this cursor, or this image, happens to be 80 pixels wide, 80 pixels tall, which means that as it's quartered here, this point here in the middle is 40, 40. That's the hot spot of the cursor. So this is where the actual pointing part of the cursor exists. So we want that to be in the center of the reticule. That's quite important. Right, so if we have a look at the scripts again, we've got the game control. This does become a texture 2D. That's important. Game control. Oh yes, apply that. Right. So we need another public variable up here. Keep the publics together. So remember, it's a texture 2D. And I'll call that reticule. Now, when the game starts, we want to change the reticule for the cursor. So simply in start here we say cursor, and then it's got a function called set cursor, and this needs three parameters. One is the first parameter is the texture we're going to use, or the texture 2D, which is the reticule. The second one is a vector 2, so that's just an x and y, which indicates the actual hot spots of the cursor. So I'm going to put in new 2, and as we saw, it's 80 pixels across, 80 pixels down, so midpoint is going to be 40 float, 40 float. The last parameter is the cursor mode, which is going to be the default cursor mode dot auto. Well, that's fairly standard. And that will change the cursor from the pointer to our reticule. Let's just check it. No errors, no warnings. Good. Stop the debugging and let's try it out. Right. So what we need to do next is to add the reticule into the script. So we've got this texture 2D here, and it's in the images. So I'll put that into the reticule spot there. Right. Let's try it out. And now we've got our gun sight, Okay, right, so we've got the gun sight. It seems to be working well. Right, I want to show a little problem here though. I'm just going to turn the sky off again and take off maximize on play. I'm going to zoom out here and move across. Right, I'm going to start the game again, but I want you to keep your eye on the ducks and also here in the hierarchy. Right, so there goes our duck. And notice the clones keep appearing, and even if I shoot the things down here, they just go off the bottom of the screen. They don't actually disappear, they go on forever. Now, you might think, okay, it's not a problem, they're off the screen. But you see, each one of these clones takes up computer resources. So really, when this clone is no longer required, we should destroy it. So that's the next thing to do. Let's stop that. So all of the ducks start off the right hand side here, and most of them will go off the left hand side. Some will go up through the top, some will go down through the bottom. So what I need to do is to put some sort of guard around here so that any ducks that escape will be destroyed. So I'm going to create a boundary here. So I'm going to start off with and create an empty game object, and I'll call this boundary. And it's a very simple game object. I'm going to add a physics 2D component, and that's going to be an edge collider. Here we are, and I'll just set up the edit. It is in the middle. Let's zoom in a little bit. Right, take this end, zoom out there, and then the other end will go up here somewhere. Give a bit of space for things to. But it's got to go around the edge here. So I can take extra points, any point here. So I can just take a point anywhere on that line and bend it out here. And again, any point on this line. So I can make any sort of shape I like. So that's the boundary. So any duck that goes past here should be destroyed. So I don't want them bouncing back. Let me just move that out a bit more. That's better. I'm going to turn it into a trigger so that it will trigger an event when any time an object hits it. Now, if we have a look at this prefab for the duck, just a reminder that it's tagged with duck. So anything that's tagged duck should be destroyed. So in the boundary here, I'm going to add another script. So in the scripts, I'm going to create a new C# script, and I shall call this kill ducks. Bit brutal, but that's what it does. So let's just open it up. Right, so we've got our standard start and update functions. I'm not interested in either of those. All I really want to do is to create a function that's going to destroy it. So this is on trigger enter 2D. So it returns void. We've got trigger enter 2D. There we go. So it looks for another collider. It's called collision here. I'm just going to call it other because it's the other collider. Right, so it's all set up for me here. Now the first thing I need to do is to check whether it's a duck going across. And we know it's a duck if it's got a tag of duck. So if and the other object is the other collider. Now notice that game object here doesn't have a capital G. It's not a game object in its own right, it's a property of the collider 2D. And that also has got a property of the tag. So again, 2 equals, and if you use capitals here, you'll need to put capitals here as well. It's got to be exactly the same. Right, curly brackets. Then simply we're going to destroy the other dot. Again, this is a property or a component of the other. Right, just check it. Well, before, let's clear it up. We don't need all of this stuff at all. So I'm just going to remove it. Right, just check, attach to Unity. No errors, no warnings. Go to stop debugging and back to Unity. Now we need to add this kill duck script to the boundary. So I'm just going to drag it from here onto the boundary. And there we have it. Just a very simple script here. So let's just check it. So I'm going to play the game again, and we should see that the ducks, as soon as they hit that boundary, they're removed from the game, and we're not building up a huge list of clones here, which is exactly what we want. Right, the next part we'll just make it into a proper game.